Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Kerry Bentivolio.
Thank you, John, for that wonderful introduction, and I'd like to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for inviting me to speak at this Arizona GOP Lincoln Day dinner. You know, the biggest problem candidates have when running for office is name recognition. I have an additional problem. People have the toughest time pronouncing my name. It's pronounced Bentivolio. Again, thank you for inviting me to speak tonight. You know, when I first ran for office, upon returning from Iraq for an open Senate seat in our August GOP primary, there were 5 candidates. I took the silver medal. At the time, I thought it pretty good for my first time out. However, with the November general election looming, as I drove around town on errands, I saw the winner's signs everywhere and wondered. And to be perfectly honest, I was feeling a little bit melancholy, thinking about what I could have done better. And about that time, as I drove through a nice subdivision, I saw one of my signs on a well-manicured lawn 5 days before the general election. The lady who owned the home was in her driveway taking groceries out of her car. I couldn't help myself and pulled over to the curb in front of the house. I jumped out of my truck and volunteered to help with her bags. I thanked her for her loyalty to the cause. She said, "He was my favorite candidate, a veteran of 2 wars, a hard worker, and as honest as the day is long. He earned my vote." I said, "But Mom, it's been 3 months since the primary. You can take the sign down now." But the real reason I ran for office is a direct result of when I was recovering from my neck injury sustained in Iraq. I was medevaced out of Iraq and sent to Landstuhl, Germany for a month. A great place in my experience, and I received the very best medical care. It was top-notch. I was then sent to Fort Knox Medical Recovery Facility. When I arrived at the unit, I noticed the low morale. I asked the soldier why, and he informed me a soldier died in the barracks. I thought it a poor reason, since it was a medical holding unit for wounded and injured soldiers. It is sad, but those things happen. He said I didn't understand and further explained that they didn't find his body for 4 days. The Army said 12 hours, and the newspapers said 2 days. The boots on the ground said he purchased a pizza on Friday for dinner, and they found him with his head in his pizza the following Monday after the evening formation. My experience at Fort Knox was not as impressive as Germany. I shared a room in a house within the fort, and after a few days received a Monday morning appointment to see the doctor at 0800 hours. I liked the doctor and felt this was a step in the right direction. After the examination, he handed me a prescription, and I went down to the Ireland Army Hospital lobby pharmacy to fill it. I handed it to the clerk at the pharmacy and took a seat in the empty waiting area. As most soldiers know, in the military, it is usually hurry up and wait. I fell asleep reading a magazine, and I woke 3 hours later. I walked over to the clerk in the pharmacy and apologized for falling asleep and asked if she called my name. She went back into the room to check and came back explaining they did not carry the medication the doctor ordered, and they would need to requisition it. "Come back on Thursday," she said. I returned on Thursday, and the same clerk explained they forgot to requisition my medication. When I explained the problem to my wife, a registered nurse for more than 35 years at the time, she explained the medication could have been filled at any Costco or Walmart pharmacy within 30 minutes. The next morning, I made an appointment to see the unit commander. The assistant commander, a physician's assistant, promised to have the prescription filled by that afternoon. She did, and I called my wife after taking one of the pills. She could tell I was slurring my words and asked the name of the prescription. I read the bottle's label, and she explained that was not what the doctor ordered. The following Monday, I returned to the physician's assistant. a lieutenant colonel, and asked why she gave me another prescription other than what the doctor ordered originally. She said I seemed upset and needed to calm down. When I arrived home, I heard someone say we were going to put the government in charge of our health care. A lady, Nancy Pelosi, announced to the United States House of Representatives they needed to pass it before they could see what was in it. The last time I heard that was from my doctor when he asked me for a stool sample, and in both cases, he got the same thing. In the town where I and my brothers grew up, our playmates in the neighborhood, many, like us, had grandfathers who served overseas in World War I. Our fathers and uncles served in World War II in that era. Across the street where we grew up was a man who served on an aircraft carrier hit by a kamikaze in World War II. The gentleman who lived in the house to our left, Mr. Charles Parker Sr., a former Marine, received his Purple Heart on Iwo Jima. A former Marine received his Purple Heart on Iwo Jima. His son, my best friend, Charles Parker Jr., followed in his father's footsteps and became a Marine. His name is inscribed on the Vietnam War Memorial not far from my former office in Washington, D.C., as is several names of people I knew as a soldier. Next door to our right was a Korean War veteran. I do not remember his name, but I do remember his daughter, Cookie, who gave me my first kiss as a young boy. Several houses further down, living side by side, were two lifelong friends who served together in Patton's Third Army when they relieved the 101st Airborne at Bastogne. We remember one of our school teachers, a Jew who had a wounded leg amputated after crawling more than a mile and eventually found freedom here in the United States. For my childhood memory, we remember another famous veteran, a World War II sailor who said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country." I doubt if he would recognize his political party today. We can still see their faces. Their examples of courage and service played a crucial role in why many of us served in the armed forces. However, what summed it up for many of us and I think our understanding of service can be best summed up by the message of the movie Saving Private Ryan. Perhaps some of you have seen it. If you haven't, and for some of you that have, I offer this reminder. If you remember, the movie opens with a scene of an elderly man with a determined look on his face, walking through the cemetery off the beaches at Normandy. His family is quietly following behind him. The American flag blows brightly in the wind overhead. The scene then shifts to a landing craft heading for the beaches of Normandy on D-Day, June 6th. Tom Hanks plays the part of Captain Miller, 2nd Rangers. As the landing craft hits the beach, the soldiers quickly experience the horrors of battle. Many of Captain Miller's soldiers are killed and wounded in the gruesome scenes that follow. After securing the beachhead, Captain Miller receives new orders. His new mission is to locate and bring home a Private Ryan, played by Matt Damon, who parachuted somewhere behind enemy lines with the 101st Airborne. Ryan's 3 brothers were recently killed within weeks of each other, including one on the beach at Normandy. The Army and General Marshall think no family should lose 4 sons to war. With a small contingent of 8 soldiers under his command, Captain Miller sets off to locate and bring home Private Ryan. Over the course of a few days looking for the young soldier, Captain Miller's small group take 2 losses. The remaining soldiers question why so many have given their lives for one soldier. Eventually, they find young Private Ryan in a small village in France, but after hearing the sad news about his fraternal brothers, decides to stay and fight alongside his brothers in arms as they defend a small bridge in that small French village against the advancing German army. Outnumbered, they prepare and fight a battle against tanks and heavy guns and armored vehicles, and most of Miller's remaining soldiers are killed. Only 2 will remain to fight another day. Captain Miller receives a mortal wound and sits gasping, his back against a motorcycle. He looks up at the young Private Ryan and with his last breaths says, "Earn this. Earn it." The scene switches to a close-up of Matt Damon. His face changes from a young Ryan to the older man we met at the beginning of the movie. He's overlooking a gravestone that reads, "Captain Miller, 2nd Rangers." Old Ryan falls to his knees in front of the gravestone and says, "Not a day goes by that I don't remember what you all did for me. I tried to live my life the best that I could. I hope that was enough. I hope that, at least in your eyes, I've earned what all of you have done for me." Many of us who remember our country's history can remember those valiant souls under George Washington who faced death from starvation, illness, and cold weather at Valley Forge with nothing more than a dream of something better than the tyranny of King George to motivate them. A constitution yet unwritten, far off in the distant future, something at the time only imagined, yet not fully realized or conceived, but soon to be written by the blood of their sacrifice. We remember those valiant souls under countless generals and President Lincoln, who, like their brothers and sisters of our revolution against King George, died for much the same in a hope for a united future constructed on a foundation of liberty and freedom for those held in bondage. President Lincoln understood what earn this meant. President Ronald Reagan understood what earn this meant too. Representative John Klein, chairman of Education and Workforce, he served under Reagan as the pilot for Marine One, then as the officer who carried the football, the codes that for release of our nuclear arsenal, and he tells us this story. Because of the social turmoil during the Vietnam War, the public wasn't very fond of our military. Few of our military wore their uniform during time off. The dress uniform hung in closets, rarely worn except during semi-formal or formal military functions. President Reagan asked his general why soldiers did not wear the uniform when they visited D.C. The general asked Reagan if he would like soldiers to wear their uniforms, and Reagan responded, "Are they proud of the uniform?" "Yes, they are, Mr. President," was the response from the general. From that point forward, a change took place across America. Military personnel who served and were serving found the pride lost during the Vietnam War. Vietnam veterans who, upon returning home from Vietnam, who felt unwelcome and unappreciated. With the help of members of the VFW and the American Legion, who assisted in the Never Again campaign with "Welcome Home, Brother" to our Vietnam veterans, Reagan started and changed all of it, ushering in a new era of appreciation for our military. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, General and President George Washington, Presidents Lincoln and Ronald Reagan knew the meaning of "earn this." We fondly remember President Lincoln, who freed those in bondage. We remember Ronald Reagan, who rebuilt our military and renewed the pride of those in uniform. Yet there is work to be done. Visiting the University of Arizona recently, I was shown the memorial of the USS Arizona. The names of the fallen and their shipmates surround the plaque commemorating those who served on the ship on December 7, 1941. The ship's bell rings in the courtyard on that campus, and one of the guns is on the Capitol grounds on the Arizona Capitol Mall. They and those who work to install the memorial certainly understand the meaning of earn this. Pat Tillman, a graduate of the University of Arizona, turned down a career as an NFL player to serve. He gave his last full measure in service to our country. He knew what earn this meant too. There are countless others. And some time ago, during a very nice dinner, I had the opportunity to talk with a captain of industry. He was the owner of several automotive dealerships in his town. I say a captain because he has the responsibility of employing several hundred people. They provide him with an honest day's work for an honest day's wage, performing a service that moves our country's economic engine. He said he employs about 350 people. I beg to disagree with him. He is responsible for much more. Those people who drive the trucks to deliver the cars to his dealerships, who work on the various assembly lines in Detroit throughout our country to build those vehicles, the longshoremen who move the cars from ship to truck in our great ports of commerce. He supports the bankers who finance cars. The advertising he does too helps to employ people in television, radio, and print media. The restaurants, the shops around town sell products to those he employs, and the teachers teach the children of his workers. He does not just employ 350 people. Employers like him can be found throughout our country, taking risks in the trenches on the front lines, leading the charge, succeeding and yes, sometimes failing, and facing those risks like heroes. Like those who stormed the beaches of Normandy, they bravely face uncertainty. He, like so many others who move forward our country's economy, striving valiantly and daring greatly, people like him help all of us, directly and indirectly, achieve the American dream. They know what earn this means. There's a famous actor who has used his free time and money not for a cause supporting the right or left, nor other divisive political issues. Rather, he created a foundation supporting active duty military and veterans. The leader of the Lieutenant Dan Band, you know his name. He is, in my opinion, a modern-day Bob Hope. He knows what earn this means. There's a different type of hero fighting against tyranny in my hometown. They are average folks like you and with average names like Matt, Jim, Fred, Marion, Betty, Mary, Cecilia, and Joan, Roseanne, Ron and Dave, Kristen and James. There are hundreds of them, and their numbers are growing. Hard-working taxpayers, the middle class, the backbone of America, standing up against the government corruption, the lies and deceit, the slander and hypocrisy. They are calling out the fake news and the prostitutes who sell their soul for an opportunity to rub shoulders with the global elites. They are demanding answers, demanding accountability, demanding transparency, demanding justice, demanding a voice. There are small groups fighting for right to life, vaccine and educational freedom. They are fighting Sharia law, demanding we return to a less intrusive constitutional government that limits government, not expanding it. Demanding answers to honest questions for which they have a right to know. They know what earned this means. The survivors, the brothers and sisters, moms and dads, the wife and husband, the sad, sorrowful faces of the family of those lost in defense of our country, we will forever remember the smiling faces of their fallen. The overwhelming emotion and daily worry of a loved one wearing our country's uniform. They know what earn this means. My imagination gets the best of me sometimes. I had a vision one early morning while sitting on a bench on the mall in D.C. I sipped a coffee and enjoyed the moment as a United States congressman before I went into my office. The runners ran by me and the bicyclists were off in the distance. I felt the breeze, the sun shining on my face. The leaves on the trees waved, and I heard the traffic's noise on the street. It all disappeared from my senses. I saw in my imagination a parade of ghosts wearing the uniforms of their day, weeping as they paraded, marched in front of the war memorials on the mall. They represented every cultural, religious, and ethnic background found here in America. They talked to me. They told me they are disappointed when they hear people say they are too busy to volunteer or donate to the cause of freedom. They are disappointed when they hear complaints it is either too hot or cold, or rain or snow prevents them from going door to door in support of freedom, when so many of our brothers and sisters braved far worse in defense of that freedom. Too busy to support the cause of freedom when so many died in that support. They are disappointed when they hear a soldier died in his room for lack of care. They are disappointed when they hear 300,000 veterans died waiting for the government health care promised them. They are disappointed when they hear more than 20 veterans die from suicide each day because no one heard them cry out in pain. They are disappointed when they hear veterans are waiting weeks to see a doctor. They are disappointed when they hear a veteran is overly medicated rather than addressing the real medical problem. They are disappointed when they hear someone call a veteran crazy or slander and libel his or her good name for personal political gain. They are disappointed when a soldier suffering from PTSD is ridiculed and berated. They are disappointed when they see someone who fails to stand for our flag, or when an American college student walks on the flag that drapes the coffin of our warriors who fell in service to our country. They are disappointed when they see a national sports person refuse to place his or her hand over their heart when our national anthem is played, sung, or read. They are disappointed when they hear a judge use a foreign law to decide a case before them. They are disappointed when they see they are sold out by the dishonest and disingenuous political hacks for political gain and re-election, then ignored and forgotten until the next election. They are disappointed when they see honest citizens vote down a gas tax, then watch the political elites vote it in anyway. They are disappointed when the political hacks support legislation for no other reason than to line their pockets. The jingle of the money has replaced the voice of the people. That long tradition of selfless serving has become selfish service. Empty and broken promises do not mend a broken heart, nor does the loss of what they suffered and died to protect. The loss of that dream of something better far off in the distant future, the American dream. For many veterans, they could not be bought by lobbyists. Our principles were purchased by our grandfathers, our fathers and uncles, our school teachers, and the fathers of our childhood playmates, and many of our friends. Our principles were purchased by those we will never know, who bled in the trenches of France, on the beaches and oceans of the Pacific and Atlantic, the sands and countless Pacific beaches, in Normandy, in the forests of Europe, the cold mountains of Korea, the jungles of Vietnam and the deserts of Iraq and mountains of Afghanistan, and a myriad of other places too numerous to name. While their names may wither from our memory, and the proud photographs fade in long-forgotten albums stored in boxes in the attic or cellar, the spirit and sacrifice of those who served will be long remembered by those of us who truly care. No matter what your background is, as citizens of this great nation, we must never let it be said that we've forgotten what our forefathers and those who have and are now serving did for us. Like many of our friends who have fought the tyranny, the hypocrisy and lies of fascism, socialism, and communism, the fight continues. For you here today, let me remind you, my friends, that the breath of a nation happens with a whisper and a nudge, patiently and stealthily, robbing its unsuspecting citizens of inalienable rights and replacing them with government controls, for the good of the people, of course. Only when it is too late to turn back the clock does a nation realize that freedom has vanished in the blink of an eye. Today, ladies and gentlemen, a war is being waged for the soul of America. It is not a war of steel and cartridge. It is a conflict of ideas, fought not in trenches, jungles, or a desert. Instead, it is played out in town halls, round tables, Republican and Tea Party and Liberty groups all across the nation. It is on radio and television shows, in Madison Avenue product commercials, in our children's classrooms. Instead of cannonades, there are editorials. Instead of bombs, there are speeches. Instead of rifle volleys, there are letters to the editor. Instead of laying minefields, they have determined what is and isn't free speech, laying claim to political correctness. The once honored profession, our mainstream media, now riddles us with fake news, hypocrisy, and lies. I cannot support those who will give in to the socialists who have taken control of President Kennedy's Democratic Party. My friends and I cannot support the charlatans masquerading the rhinos or Vichy Republicans. Who will stand and fight even if we are the last standing? If we fight, they will fall. If you believe in the promise of America, that sacred American dream, it is time to fight back. If we reach for the stars and stripes, that promise of America, and even if we fall short, we will still be higher than anyone else, because we fight for a righteous cause. It is time to step up and be counted. It is time to grit your teeth. It is time to clench your fist. It is time to get in the fight. It is time to get in the trenches, to fight, to fight, to fight, for there is no rest for the successful. My brothers and sisters, we patriotic, God-fearing Americans will never give up. We will never surrender. If we do get knocked down, we will pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and get back in the fight. We are Americans, and that is what we do. Let not a day go by that you don't remember what they all did for us. Let it be said of you that you tried to live your life the best that you could, defending truth and freedom and the ideals of George Washington, of Jefferson, President Reagan, and pray and hope that was enough. Let it be said in that, at least in the eyes of your children and your children's children, you earned what all of them, our forefathers, have done for us and our families. You came here today to hear my humble voice speak truth, not a political speech. You came here today to hear those voices crying out, the fallen veterans, the crying unborn, victims of the great American Holocaust, and generations lost to us forever. When you leave here tonight, my fellow brothers and sisters in uniform, hope and pray you will daily stop and reflect on what so few brave men and women have given this country in our fight to achieve the American dream. They hope you will long remember what was meant by earn this. We hope you will hold your elected officials and your government agencies accountable to the task of perpetuating freedom, to join and help those who fight to remove the chains of tyranny forged by government clerks and career politicians who are presently neither transparent nor accountable, who will lie and cheat, spread propaganda and fake news to achieve their selfish goals. This is your country, and it's time to take it back. We owe it to those who died for it. We owe it to our children and our children's children. You hold the power in your hands as freedom fighters to move the ball downfield, to charge and defeat those who are destroying our country from within. We must, together, we must step up and be counted. You are the essential part of our quest to return to a God-fearing America. It is a team effort to push the ideals freedom represents forward. We must prepare ourselves to do battle and engage the enemy. You must be the one to save our country because you are relevant to the fight we are now engaged for God, our families, and our country. From the deepest reaches of our hearts, and especially to my good friends here today who know what earn this means, in behalf of my brothers and sisters who wore the uniform of our country, the lost generations, thank you for giving us this opportunity to speak to you today. May God bless you all. Thank you.